They accused him of faking his medals. Can you imagine? On Memorial Day of all days, right there in front of the whole town, phones came out, people laughed, and whispers turned into cruel chuckles. He didn't fight back. He didn't shout or argue or demand respect. No, he just stood there silent, humiliated, clutching something deeply personal in his hands. Until the doors suddenly opened and a general in full uniform stormed in, shaking with rage. What happened next silenced the entire crowd, and after that moment, no one ever looked at that old man the same way again. Before we go further, let me ask you something from the heart. Are you ready to help us honor those unsung heroes who've sacrificed so much in silence? If you believe stories like these, raw and powerful, deserve to be shared, hit that subscribe button and help keep them alive. What's unfolding here isn't just a story, it's a reminder of the quiet legends among us, waiting to be noticed. His name was Daniel Cole. Though most people in town didn't even know that. To them, he was just that quiet old man, who lived 3 miles past the edge of town in a weathered one-story house with peeling white paint and a flag that never once touched the ground. He spoke little. He waved politely. He walked with a slow, deliberate limp, one leg dragging just slightly, as if every step carried the weight of memories too heavy to share. What was hidden behind those eyes? What did that limp really carry? Nobody seemed to ask. The local grocer knew just one detail: Daniel liked his coffee black, no sugar, no cream. The librarian remembered him 2 years ago. He returned a book 15 years late, slipping a crisp $20 bill inside with a handwritten apology. That was Daniel. Thoughtful. Quiet. But what about his past? Nobody ever dared to ask. He never wore his old uniform. He never bragged about battles or victories. He never called himself a hero. And yet, every Memorial Day without fail, Daniel showed up early. Always early. Before the speeches, before the flags, before the selfies and the news vans, he would come. He would kneel beside the town's marble war memorial, lay down a small bouquet of plastic flowers, and touch 7 names with his fingertips. 7 names carved in stone, etched into his soul. He would stay there in silence until the sun reached its peak. Then, like a ghost, he would walk away. Unnoticed by most. Forgotten by the rest. But not this year. No, this year would be different. The town wanted a bigger show of patriotism, banners stretching high across the square. New speakers blasting loud anthems, volunteers from the local college handling live streams, hashtags, engagement posts. Memorial Day had gone digital. And this time, Daniel was being watched. Thinking it was a harmless joke. But it wasn't. The young volunteer stepped forward, puffed up with arrogance. You think you can just pin on some medals and pretend you were somebody? Daniel rose slowly, flag folded in his hand so tightly it looked like it had never been opened. He didn't snap back. He didn't argue. He didn't even frown. He just stood there, silent. A young Marine named Corporal Ben Morales, fresh from deployment, stood frozen. He didn't know Daniel personally. But that limp, that silence, that haunted look in his eyes. It wasn't fake. And there, on the edge, rifle in one hand, arm in a sling, was Daniel Cole. Same jawline. Same eyes. Same man. Captioned simply, Recon 4, Korea, 1952. Photo, Cole. Ben's breath caught. He texted a contact, "Sir, I need a favor. It's urgent. It's about Sergeant Daniel Cole." As speeches droned on, the mayor eventually made the mistake of inviting Josh to the podium. With cocky confidence, the boy strutted up. "Today we honor real heroes," he said, pausing for applause. A man who carried 7 names etched in his soul. A man who had never once asked for their praise. And now, they would never see Daniel Cole the same way again. "Where is he?" the general asked, his voice cutting through the tense silence like a blade. Ben lifted his hand and pointed toward the far edge of the parking lot. All eyes turned. There, parked beneath the shadow of an old oak, sat Daniel's truck. He hadn't moved. He hadn't even flinched through everything that had unfolded. But when the general approached, each step deliberate, boots pounding the pavement with authority, Daniel finally stirred. Slowly, he opened the truck door, stepped out, and stood tall. The air seemed to freeze. The two men locked eyes. In a voice that carried like thunder without ever needing to shout, the general declared, "This man was a legend when I was still crawling through boot camp mud. He trained the men who trained me. He led missions no one else would touch. I owe my career to his generation." The crowd gasped. A murmur swept across the square. Did he just say legend? Did he just call this quiet old man the foundation of his career? The general turned, his sharp eyes raking across the faces before him. "And today," he said, his tone heavy with disappointment, "you all called him a fraud." The silence that followed was unbearable. And took the microphone. "This ceremony," he declared, "is no longer about red, white, and blue bunting. It is no longer about parades or polished speeches. This is about accountability." Someone began to clap. Just one person at first, slow and deliberate. Then another joined. And another. The sound swelled, not enthusiastic like a pep rally, but reverent, deep, carrying meaning. Soon the entire square stood, hands coming together in a rising wave of applause. Not for medals. Not for a uniform. For a lifetime buried in silence. Daniel did not smile. He did not wave. He simply nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and stepped forward to stand beside the general. General Harland lowered his voice, softer now, but heavy with sincerity. Then he accepted it. That simple gesture, one soldier to another, spoke louder than any speech. Back at the podium, General Harland gave one final order. From this day forward, this memorial square will be renamed. It will be called the Sergeant Daniel Cole Veteran Circle. The town council can handle the paperwork later. But as far as I'm concerned, it's already done. The applause that followed wasn't deafening. It wasn't meant to be. It was heavier, fuller, more real. A town that had mocked a man hours before now stood humbled before him. Daniel's gaze swept the crowd. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His silence had transformed, from something mistaken for weakness into something undeniable, weight, legacy, truth. Shook his hand firmly, looked him square in the eyes, and said softly, "You listened." That's rare these days. Ben's throat tightened. He couldn't think of the right words, so he simply nodded. Holding on to the weight of the moment. Daniel returned to his truck. But this time, no one filmed him. No one mocked him. No one blocked his path. Instead, people stepped aside. Some placed their hands over their hearts. A few saluted. Others whispered, "Thank you." Most just watched him pass. Awed and unsure how to approach a man who had been invisible just an hour earlier, and now stood larger than anyone in the square. Back home, Daniel carefully placed the folded flag back on its shelf. He didn't call anyone. He didn't post about what had happened. He didn't answer the dozen voicemails flooding his phone as the story spread across town. He simply sat on his porch. Sipping his black coffee, eyes fixed on the American flag waving gently in the evening breeze. The same flag he had protected all his life. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that the world remembered his name. The next morning, something unexpected, something almost unbelievable, happened. At first, Daniel thought he was dreaming when he heard footsteps outside his door. But there they were. A small group of townspeople, led by Ben, with a few of the embarrassed volunteers from the day before trailing behind. No reporters. No flashing cameras. No staged apologies. Instead, they carried tools, paint, brushes, even lumber in their hands. And then came the question, so simple, yet so heavy with meaning, could they repair his fence? They didn't ask for speeches or forgiveness, they just wanted to fix what had been broken. Daniel didn't say yes. He didn't need to. He simply stepped aside, holding the door open. And that quiet gesture said everything. Over the next few days, more came. Not with microphones or headlines, but with meals left on his porch, offers to mow the lawn. Another neighbor came carrying something small but priceless, a ribbon from Daniel's jacket that had fallen during the chaos of the ceremony. He had picked it up and held on to it. And certainly not for Daniel Cole. Something had shifted like the wind changing course, and no one who witnessed it would ever forget. The old man they once ignored had spoken louder in silence than any booming speech could have. Weeks passed, and life returned to normal, but normal no longer looked the same. Each morning, the newly renamed Sergeant Daniel Cole Veteran Circle was cleaned before sunrise. Students left handwritten notes addressed to names they hadn't even known a month earlier. And sometimes Daniel would visit, not to kneel, not to mourn, but simply to sit on the bench facing the stone, remembering. He didn't need to explain. The town already knew. One Saturday, a group of cadets visited as part of civic duty training. Their instructor introduced a guest speaker, Daniel. No podium. No medals. Just Daniel, standing tall with his quiet gravity. "I don't care how straight your uniform is," he told them. "I don't care what you score on the range. If you want to wear this country's name on your chest, start by respecting the ones who did it before you." His voice lowered, steady as stone. "You won't know their names. Some don't even have headstones. But every time you salute a flag, remember, you're standing on the shoulders of the forgotten." Then he stepped back and walked away. The cadets didn't move until he was gone. That was the last time Daniel Cole ever spoke in public. Yet his name stayed, not in statues, not carved into stone with empty titles, but in the way people paused at the memorial, in the way children learned the true meaning of Memorial Day. And each year, the first to arrive was always Ben Morales. No cameras. No uniform. Just a folded flag, 7 names memorized, 1 legacy carried forward. He would kneel, touch the wall, and whisper, "Thank you." Sometimes, the greatest heroes never ask to be remembered. They just hope, pray, even, that when the moment comes, someone will listen. And in the case of Daniel Cole, someone did. Reading about Huin's journey, I cannot help but feel a deep sense of sadness and anger. Society often judges young women who fall into prostitution. But rarely do we pause to understand the pressures, manipulations, and loneliness that push them there. To me, this is not simply a story of one girl's wrong choice, but a reflection of how vulnerable young people, especially students, can be when searching for belonging or financial stability. What breaks my heart is how easily trust can be twisted into exploitation. Friends who should guide and protect can sometimes be the very ones who lead others astray. This makes me realize how urgent it is for us, as a community, to talk openly about these issues instead of silencing them with shame. I believe education should not only focus on academics but also on teaching emotional resilience, self-worth, and awareness of manipulation. If society keeps looking away, stories like Huin's will repeat endlessly. Personally, I feel we must replace judgment with compassion, because what these girls need most is not condemnation, but guidance, support, and a safe space to reclaim their dignity. That, to me, is real humanity. Thanks for joining us on this intense ride. If it resonated, hit subscribe, ring the bell, don't miss out. Here's to the silent sacrifices, together, we're unstoppable. See you next time.